Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Coleman Young Engineer Society interview skills event. We represent grads and student engineers in the region, so thank you all for coming. Any questions, please put them in the Q&A box down below, and please note that this event is being recorded. I'll pass you on to Paul now, who will introduce our speakers for this evening.
Guys, so we've kind of four speakers across the whole industry as a whole, just to kind of give you the best kind of understanding of what kind of interview skills and stuff that we're us engineers are going to need, and not just within the engineering roles. This can be typical to all the kind of disciplines, not just in, again, as I said, what we're kind of doing. So as you can see from the slide we have up now, fairly well covered across the industry. We're going to start off the evening with Robert Corby. Works in a multinational company, international. Then we go on to Kira, that recently moved to Regeneron as an automation engineer. And then we hit the civil background with Darrell Han, and then we finish off with Roseanne. Roseanne, as you see, has 20+ years in HR. So if there's anybody that understands how to get past an interview process, it's going to be her. So I'll pass on to our first speaker of the evening, Robert Corby. He'll take it from here. He'll go through what he feels is kind of his kind of interpretation of what we need. So if Rob would like to share your screen there and move on.
Sure. You can all see that okay?
Yep.
Great. I suppose introduce myself. My name is Robert Corby. I'm 23 years old. I have a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Design Manufacturing Engineering in UL. I currently work as a quality engineer in a multinational engineering company, and I've previously worked in Boston Scientific in Galway and also Analog Devices in Limerick. So I suppose in my time I've probably had a fair share of interviews, some good, some bad. So hopefully I can maybe share some tips on what I've learned in the process, and hopefully you can pick up on some bits and pieces here and there that might help you with your interviews. So I'll get started on some of the slides that I have. I suppose I've structured in a way that I've done some kind of information on preparing for an interview, what happens within an interview, and then some kind of finishing points on finishing an interview, and also some extra kind of tips that I've learned through my interviews, I suppose. So I get started on the prep for an interview. Going through an interview, I suppose you kind of apply for a role, apply for a job, and you'll get your job description. I suppose this is something that you should really interrogate and kind of read between the lines on. With any role, you'll get your job description when you apply, or I suppose when you get your interview. And in that, it'll be kind of a list of maybe the requirements that are applicable for the job, be it the skills required, the traits that are preferable, or qualifications that are necessary for the role. And you should really kind of look into these and make sure that these are something that you can speak to and have examples of, be it maybe teamwork skills or good communication skills, or traits such as someone who can work well under pressure, or examples like that you want to bring up throughout your interview while you're answering questions, so that you're really answering to what's being asked of you and what's being asked of the role, to give yourself the best, I suppose, success in impressing the interviewers. Your prep interview also will include maybe your previous employments and your education studies. So in your previous employments, there's definitely a lot of skills that you would have picked up, be it professional skills or engineering skills, I suppose. In your professional setting, no matter what kind of discipline you're working in, you'll maybe pick up skills such as scheduling meetings, or making presentations, or working together with a team. And these are all valuable skills that maybe aren't necessarily point towards engineering, but are definitely professional skills that interviewers and people hiring will look for, that might set you apart from other interviewers or other interviewees, and would also kind of stand to in your job when you do, if you are successful, I suppose, as a successful candidate. Tools learned in education, I suppose. Being engineers, I suppose we learn a lot of different tools and techniques and processes through college, and there might be some of these tools that you could have learned through education, such as, I suppose, SolidWorks or something like that, that might be very applicable to a role you're applying for, and definitely these things that you want to express your capability in using, and how proficient you are with them, and also qualifications that may become relevant. I know when I was in engineering, we did some modules and stuff that actually came with accredited certs, for such software as SolidWorks. And some of these things can be quite useful when applying for a job, and shows that you have skills that might be kind of sought after, and not everyone has a qualification, some or a certificate in certain skills and tools. So some of these things are very good to bring up within your interview. Skills and hobbies as well. If you have any extracurricular activities that might apply to the role or show your interest in engineering. Some people like to participate in exhibitions and conferences just like this. Be involved in the Young Engineers Society or other engineering conferences that may be going on in your local area. Showing interest in these definitely does make you stand out and shows you've a genuine interest in engineering, and might kind of make you stand out from other interviewees for some of the roles that you're applying for. So bringing up a lot of these different things is definitely preferable when you're going through your interview process. So I suppose what to expect in the interview itself. The number one question, I suppose, from my interview or from my experience in interviews that I've done, that comes up consistently every single time is tell me a little bit about yourself. And I think as Irish people, we're inclined to kind of step away from talking about ourselves and to step away from taking compliments. So it's not something we're almost ready to answer. So being able to speak about yourself kind of off the cuff is definitely something you should prepare for. With this, I've kind of approached this in a way of speaking about yourself in a past, present, future tense. That in the past, you've obviously had different educations, different job experiences. In the present, you may be in a college role or working somewhere at the moment, or in the future, your future career prospects. It's kind of a nice way of structuring talking about yourself when sometimes it can be quite awkward and kind of it might knock your confidence to kind of speak about yourself. So it's something that's consistently come up in interviews that I've done, and it's something that is really will really stand for you if you do prepare well and give yourself the best kind of success in speaking about yourself. Question number two that consistently again comes up and has kind of caught me in a few different interviews as well is what you know about the company and what you know about the role. So be it any company that you're working for, you should definitely research the company to your best of your ability on what they do, where they're located, maybe when they were founded, if they were kind of in the news recently, or if they might be turning 20 years next year. So it shows your interest in the company and shows to interviewers that you're really someone that is looking forward to working for their company. And also what you know about the role, let's say I'm a quality engineer, what you know about a quality engineer, what do they do on a day-to-day basis. So it shows you're prepared to work for that role. What are common questions that I've come across in interviews are your strengths versus weaknesses. This is one I was caught out with an interview before, where I suppose in an interview you're kind of ready to talk about all things you're great at and things you're happy with and things you're strong at doing, but we're not really prepared to talk about what we're weak at, I suppose, or what we can improve on. And that's something that's caught me before. So preparing for something like this will give you and give the interviewer an idea of someone who can accept that there's something that they can improve on and realize that there's room for improvement in some of your engineering knowledge. Also, some common questions are, why did you apply for this role, or what can you bring to the company? Again, it's shown to the interviewer that you're someone who can really excel at the role and know exactly your own strengths, your own weaknesses, and what can really make you stand out from other people who are applying for the role. I've also included some do's and don'ts during interview. So some of these kind of relate to the points I've said before. Do speak about the job description and give examples. So be it the skills that they're looking for, speak to these skills, and for each skill that you're mentioning, make sure you have an example. I know you could say you have great teamwork skills. So with that, you want to bring up maybe your workplace teamwork skills and examples of how you've worked in a team in a workplace, and also maybe your educational teamwork skills that you worked on projects in college. Explain when you were challenged. Again, you want to make sure you're highlighting that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, that sometimes things get tough, you have to work under pressure, and how you've reacted to that, and also following up on that, what you've learned. So in times of when things are tough, what you've learned and what you can improve on as an engineer. Don't bring up anything you don't have an example for, so this kind of ties back to the opposite of the other one, or have one word answers. So you want to really be selling yourself and be able to kind of extrapolate on anything you do bring up, that you're showing off your skills and what you have experienced previously as an engineer. Don't undersell yourself. So I suppose a lot of stuff we would do in the workplace or in college is a lot of teamwork. And I know a lot of things you would be saying, oh, we did this as a team. The goal for the team was this. But I suppose they're hiring you as a person and not the team. So make sure you do highlight what you've done yourself and the achievements you've made and what you've learned from working in a team. And again, don't ignore when things go wrong. Make sure you bring up when things haven't gone well, what you've learned and how you've improved on that then thereafter. I suppose at the end of the interview then, it's always good to have some questions prepared. It shows your interest in the role, and you can obviously bring up anything that does kind of you want to quiz on the role. Some of the common questions, what does a day-to-day life look like as a quality engineer? You can kind of gauge what you'll be working at if you were successful with the role. Is there room for career progression within the company? Obviously it shows you're determined as an engineer. Is there room to develop into other roles so you can try other different functions of the business? You can also ask if it's not already described, what's the pay? And also tell me about the team I'll be working with. So it shows your interest and it shows you want to kind of suss out the role. Other than that, some other tips I have are to smile, obviously. It's probably welcoming on Zoom calls and that kind of thing. It's not an in-person thing. So smiling on a face cam is probably your best first step and give a good first impression. Professional dress code. Preparing in advance, know where you want to go for the interview. If it's an in-person interview, if it's an online one, test your technology, test your mic, test your camera. And also, I suppose in a general one, speak like you're speaking to an old friend is one I've heard previously. It's a good tip to kind of calm the nerves and help you speak not too professionally. Because I suppose when you're going for a role, they want to know someone that they're working with and they can enjoy working with, not someone who's a bit too uptight. So speak like you're speaking to an old friend, and your nerves shouldn't get the better of you. That's my presentation. So I suppose best luck to everyone with your interviews, and we have a quick Q&A session at the end, so we can answer any questions on anything you've discussed here at the end.
Thanks very much, Rob. Appreciate that a lot. It's a very good presentation, and I think you touched on a lot of points. So great start to the evening. Also, I won't delay, guys. I'm going to lead you on to Kira now. So Kira is in automation on engineer for Regeneron, and I'll let her do all the introducing. So best of luck.
Thanks, Paul. So as Paul said, my name is Kira O'Donovan. I won't tell you how old I am, but I graduated with a Bachelor of Engineering in Electronic Computer Engineering from UL in 2018. I went from that into a graduate program as a graduate automation engineer for Johnson & Johnson, which is a medical device company. And then this past year, I transferred over to Regeneron as an automation engineer, which is a biotech company. So I've been in the compliance world for quite some time. Sorry now. So I'm just gonna, I'm not one for a lot of words on slides. So I'll just talk you through what I have here. So I wrote not all about your experience. And when I was talking about it in work today that I was doing this presentation, the managers backed me up on this point, saying that a lot of the people on this call might have had their co-op or their internships cancelled due to COVID. But companies aren't looking for you to have 20 years of experience when you're a graduate. As long as you're willing to learn and you show that you're willing to learn the way that they do things. For example, like in my own compliance sort of world, it's all paperwork. Everything has to be done a certain way and everything has to be tracked, especially like when medical devices are going into the body or drugs and biotech and all that. So as long as you're willing to follow procedures and work with them, they don't really mind that you've missed your placement per se. So another one is they don't use generic CVs. So I know like a lot of us when we were younger probably had one CV that we handed around to all the shops and the bars in our hometown to get jobs. But like it's not going to work for when you're applying for graduate roles. As Rob said, like have a look at the job description and what they're asking of you in the role, and don't necessarily copy it straight into your CV, but have examples prepared or be able to talk to it. So like a good one is sports teams are always a good example of teamwork. If you were the captain of something, or you know, if you led a debate team in school, These are all like examples of leadership that aren't necessarily work-based, and you can talk to them as part of the skills that they're asking for in the job description. So edit your CV, have a look at the job description, edit your CV, don't send the same one to everybody, but also don't copy straight out the job description and put it into your CV, because they'll catch on. And another one, a piece of advice I got was from my mentor, was to apply for everything. So I know Irish people, again, are great at underselling themselves and not, you know, taking compliments and not bigging ourselves up. But if you see a job description and you have 4 out of the 5 things, don't be afraid to throw your name down for it. Like I said, if you have the other 4 and you're willing to work to get the 5th skill, companies will take that into account. And also, even if you think, oh, I'm not going to get this job, apply for it. I know of loads of people who applied for jobs they didn't think they were going to get, and during the interview process, the person interviewing them told them, oh, I actually think you'd be better for this role, and they ended up getting a different role in the same company. So it's all about network building and like putting yourself out there, and even the experience of doing the interview itself. I know a lot of I did a lot of graduate interviews, and a lot of them have like group sections to them, and I'd never done that before, so it was good to experience that and have different views from what the different companies, how they interview you. And even if I didn't get the job I went for in X company, maybe in 15 years when I go back to interview, I'll know more about them because I interviewed for them as a graduate role. So yeah, that's the end of my slides. So if you have any questions, just pop them into the Q&A chat and we'll answer them at the end.
Thanks, thanks very much, Ciara. Again, excellent presentation, and I like the way you use pictures, and it's an excellent way to get your point across. Again, I won't delay, guys. I don't want to hold anyone, so we're going to move on to Dara. And as you can see, well, you will see Dara is a graduate engineer with Punch Engineering as a civil engineer. So we'll hand you over to him and let him do all the talking. That's sorry, Dara, you're on mute there.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Paul. I'm just going to. Thanks for that, Paul. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Darley Han. I work in Punch Consulting Engineers in the Limerick office as a graduate civil engineer. As a graduate civil engineer, I'm a member of the Civils and Environmentals Department and find work challenging but very rewarding. I'm going to give you a small bit of a background about myself before I go to the interview skills. My daily work duties include the regular liaising with various local authorities, including Irish Water, participate in hydraulic design of storm and foul networks, preparing traffic and transport assessments, as well as flood risk assessments. On a daily basis, I participate in multidisciplinary design and site meetings. In addition to working at Punch, I've obtained work experience at 2 other well-known institutions. While in college, I participated in ESP's Intercolleges Challenge, resulting in a second year summer internship with ESP's Engineering and Major Projects Division. While doing my internship, I spent 4 months as a member of the substation design team. My ESB colleagues recommended to me to gain experience in a variety of different areas within the engineering field. ESB provided me the experience within a design office, albeit that it was for a short period of time. From that, I decided to focus my 9 months placement to greater my knowledge on site. With this strategy, I sourced and completed a 9-month work placement with PJ Hegarty's and Sons on site as an on-site engineer in the development of Limerick Prison. As an on-site engineer, I worked in a design and build contract where my responsibilities included being a contact person between the design engineers in the office and the workers on the ground and coming up with solutions. I then graduated from the University of Limerick in September of 2021 with a bachelor's in civil engineering. That's enough about myself. Here are my interview tips for you. During the interview, have confidence in yourself. Relax. The interviewers don't expect you to know everything. Speak slowly and answer the questions you're asked. You've just graduated from college. You'll be mentored by a more senior member of staff in your new position, which will help you round out all your knowledge bases. The interview will have received and reviewed your grades and degree prior to your interview, so they will know that you're a problem solver and have made it through a degree or a master's. Some companies may require 6 to 7 different interview stages, focusing on different skills, including communication, teamwork, and knowledge. When preparing for your interviews, inquire what the goals that each interview is for. As an engineer, you're required to participate as a team, on a team every day. The interviewers are going to ask you questions to see what kind of personality you have and see how you'd fit into working into a team dynamic. Always research the company you're going to interview with, including the size and history of the company. Research any ongoing or recent large projects that they're involved in, especially if they have any in your area. You have a large alumni network. Reach out to people you know who may be able to put in a good word for you. Prepare some questions to ask the interviewers to show your curiosity. If you have any questions, it shows the interviewers that you've an interest in the company and the position. Dress appropriately for the interview. You're selling yourself, so dress to impress. And lastly, be on time for the interview. I like to be 10 minutes early for an in-person interview to make sure that I'm in the right location, that I'm not lost, and I'm not going to be late. If the interviews are online, like a lot of them are now, log in early and test your camera and speaker for functionality, and make sure your Wi-Fi works. That's the end of my presentation. Put your questions in the question blocks below.
Thanks very much, Tara. Appreciate that a lot again. Perfect interview, perfect slideshow to actually explain. And like, guys, from the first 3 people, you'll definitely see the overlap. So what these people are talking about does matter. And like the couple of lads that are here, like, you do understand. And I kind of expand on the points of the first 3 lads. Like, I've done through the process of interviews myself. I'm a researcher here in the university, and these are points like where I would have came across in more depth in internet searches. And the fact that there's 3 people after saying basically the same thing is actually going to save you so much time. The things they are mentioned, Roseanne hopefully will agree when she gets onto her part that these things do matter. And again, it's just, it's quite lovely to see, like, it's just so early in your early stages. So look, last but not least, with Roseanne, let her talk. Hopefully a couple of questions will come in through the chat box then. So I'll pass you on.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just going to start from, hopefully it's coming up now. But yes, to Paul's point there, I thought it was great because from the first 3 speakers already, there is overlap, there is consistency, and I'm going to repeat some of what everybody else has said already, but hopefully I'm going to give you some extra tips as well. So just to explain, obviously, this is obviously all around kind of interview skills. So really from today, what I'm hoping to do is to kind of give you some tips and build on a lot of what Ciara and Dara and Rob have already said, so we'll kind of take it from there. I am again, just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview as to my own experience. I've been working in HR for 20 years, so I'm definitely like Ciara, I'm definitely not going to mention what age I am. But so I've been working in HR. I've had a lot of variety. I've worked with a lot of organizations. In the last 2 years, I've set up my own consultancy business. So again, you know, with that, getting exposure to a lot of different organizations, what their needs are. And again, as part of one of the many aspects of HR that I do, it's recruitment. So in my kind of time in HR, I've kind of spent a lot of, I've had a lot of experience with various roles from an interviewing perspective, right from graduate recruitment up to sort of executive hires. And as part of that, through any organization I've worked with in-house or as I work with as a consultant, I'll be advising them on the process, so the selection process that they're going to utilize to make that hire. So that could be anything from sort of, how many interviews are going to take place? Is there going to be any assessments? Is there going to be any kind of personality tests? All of that type of stuff. So again, we will kind of touch on some of that today. So what I would say is that first impressions start, but they don't start when you necessarily walk into the room. So what I want you to really sort of take away from this particular point is that when you're actively looking for a job, when you're answering your phone, just be cognizant of that. That's when the first impressions start. It's all about how you're responding to emails, how engaged you are in your responses. It's not necessarily just the interviewer, that there could be, they could be getting feedback from other people within the organization that you've had interactions with. So again, just be cognizant that first impressions kind of start prior to that first interview. Again, it's been touched on by Rob, I think, and a couple of others. Preparation, research the organization, know the role requirements, and the amount of people who I would have invited to interviews and they're looking for the job description again, which is fine. And if you don't have it, absolutely ask for it. But I think it goes, if you're prepared and when you're applying for jobs, just try to download that job description and save it somewhere so that you can recall who you've applied for and what the job was. And again, you can use it in that preparation for the interview itself. Researching the organization, again, it's been said, know what they are, know why you wanted to apply for why you wanted to apply for the role, but reminding yourself of all that as you prepare for the interview itself. And go, it doesn't have to be rocket science, go to the website, look it up, they will, if you once you've made the effort and you know a little bit about it and you can talk to that, the organization's going to really appreciate that. So utilize some of the information you're getting from the website, use the terminology they're using, they really don't mind. It's the effort that they want to see. I think Dara mentioned it again, be confident, ask questions if you're not sure what the purpose of the interview is, just so that you can prepare accordingly. But also to that point, ask about the type of interview. Is it going to be a CV overview? Is it going to be competency based? Is it something else? But also ask about who's going to be interviewing you. So you can maybe do a little bit of a search on LinkedIn, ask how many people are going to be interviewing you. One of my very first interviews, I remember just out of college, I walked into a room and there was 4 or 5 people sitting in the room, and I was taken aback. So again, if you've asked that question, you maybe won't be taken by surprise, and you can prepare accordingly. As a HR professional, I am a fan of competency-based questions. So what I would say is like a CV, an overview of the CV. Obviously, I don't always go through that with people. I'll always talk to other types of questions as well. But there will definitely, somewhere within an interview that I carry out, there'll always be competency-based questions. And definitely, I think Rob talked about it, prepare for those. Think about, can be types of questions around teamwork, communication, conflict management, but think about how you're going to answer that question. Have your example. What an interviewer really is looking for is this acronym. So to kind of talk, to the STAR approach. So you're talking to the situation, what was presenting itself, when you, within a if it's a communication example, how you can demonstrate excellent communication skills. You're thinking of your example that you want to portray. You're thinking about the background to that. You're outlining it from the start. You're talking through then the challenge, the issue, the problem that was encountered, what you did. And again, I think Rob talked about it. Teamwork is great. in a teamwork question, but in competency-based questions, definitely it's about what you did. So don't be afraid to use the word I. I will always, kind of probe into examples that a candidate would give and say, but what was your role in that? Or did you make that decision? So again, just be able to talk to your example and know it really well. And to the end point, what was the result? What was the benefit of the action that you delivered to the organization or to, whatever environment you were in? Because, the examples, and again, a lot of the presenters here this evening have talked to that. It's not just about your work experience. It is about examples that you've encountered in college, through teamwork, through projects, through social activities, through societies, whatever that is going to be. It could be voluntary work. It doesn't necessarily have to be that corporate environment. So again, just thinking to that example. And as you make your application, as you get called for interview, start thinking about those examples, trying to recall what they are, using the job description. And again, highlighting out, because within most job descriptions, it will talk about the competencies that are required for the role. So again, just thinking back and having those examples to hand. Again, it's something that's been touched on. Think about the close, think about the organization you're going to be, that you're being interviewed for. You can adapt your approach, you can adapt your style somewhat, and think about that. But to me, go smarter. If in doubt, you don't want to walk in and think, oh, I really did underdress in this environment. You're not going to feel like that, I believe, if you've gone smarter. So again, I don't think you'll ever regret that. And again, you can get more casual on day one when you start your new role. So again, to me, it just kind of shows that you care. You've made an effort. Things like having the telephone number of the person you're meeting, just having it to hand in case you get lost, in case something happens, in case I've had, okay, I think it was on their first day of employment, but this can happen in an interview where there's a code on the front door and no receptionist, and they couldn't get hold of anybody to let them in the front door of the building, so they're outside. And so again, just having phone numbers to hand. I've got note taking here simply because during interviews, whether they be remote or whether they be face-to-face, it's likely that the interviewers are going to be taking notes. So don't be put off by that. And some people are better at engaging while note taking than others. So sometimes you'll see a lot of the tops of people's heads, but just bear with that. They're going to take notes so that they can recall what people have said. But look for their non-verbal cues. Watch watch to see, do they want to say something? Does it feel like they want you to move on, to stop? So just be aware of those things as you go through the interview. This covers kind of more tips for remote-based interviews. To me, as much as possible, although you'll be in front of a screen, treat it as much like a face-to-face interview as possible. Dress in the same way as you would. Turn up on time, be prepared, all of that type of stuff. Have all of the preparation that you would have done for your face-to-face interview, just like for a remote interview, just like you would for a face-to-face interview. And things like testing the video, testing the software, making sure that whatever it is downloaded onto your computer, because sometimes that happens. And if you only dial in sort of 2 minutes beforehand and there's a software update that needs to happen, again, just be cognizant of all of that. So check all of those beforehand, test the video, check what's behind you. You want to make sure that it's part of your image too. So again, just kind of think to that and be on time. I know it's been mentioned by other speakers. I know I've kind of touched on it earlier, but again, just be on time. You don't want people waiting for you. It just doesn't necessarily give that best first impression. In terms of sort of the face-to-face, and there's a couple of different tips here. So face-to-face interviews and then some additional items as well. But when you are meeting people on a face-to-face basis, just remember that the interview starts, as soon as you enter the building, and it doesn't end until you leave. And keep that in mind. Small talk in lifts, small talk as people move you through the building, that might be the interviewer themselves. So again, just kind of be aware of that. It might be small talk, it can be friendly, but just be cognizant of what you're saying and what your responses are. In the event that you can't think of an example or a response to a particular question, I know you can get flustered, and obviously if I was the interviewer, I would try and help you through that, but that's not everybody's approach, because sometimes people don't realize, sometimes people aren't experienced interviewers, maybe they're nervous as well. But if you can't think of a response, pause, take a breath. If they've given you a glass of water, hopefully they have, use that time to maybe just, kind of try to recollect your thoughts. And if you need to, ask whether you can come back to that question at the end. Try not to let it phase you and move to the next one. And if they don't ask you that same question towards the end, maybe you can bring it up at the end and say, by the way, I have actually thought of an answer. Can I cover that question? So again, there are ways of overcoming that. And in terms of rambling, you can be nervous. I appreciate it can be awkward. Be conscious of rambling, be conscious of going on, look for those cues, look for them trying to interject into the conversation, and try and speed up, and if need be, kind of be more succinct and get to the end. You can always start with a shorter answer and offer them the opportunity to delve into something in more detail, and that's a way of overcoming it. And while it is so key to be prepared, try not to be too polished. So don't have the answers, too repeated, just kind of flowing off the tongue too much. Take a breath, pause, be prepared, but don't recite a response to an answer, if at all possible. And then really finally, again, I know some of the other speakers have talked to it, why do you want this job? Have the answer to that question. Why do you want to work with this organization in this role? And it really does give you the opportunity to show your enthusiasm, your excitement to start working with them. So use it, and have your questions prepared. Again, I know Rob, I think, kind of gave you some examples, all great questions. I do think that the salary question can be asked. I just think you need to definitely, maybe just don't start with it. And, so definitely ask it, because it is an important one for everybody. But be cognizant of when you're asking it. It might not be in a first round interview. It could be at a later stage in the interview process. It might not be the first of your questions. Think to those questions around personal growth and development, what the organization is going to give to you, how many graduates they've hired, how the progression of those graduates has worked within those organizations. Start with those types of questions in the first instance. And just remember, when an interviewer walks into that room, they want that person they're meeting to be their next hire. It's not, an interviewer doesn't want somebody to do a bad interview. So they do want you to succeed, and just keep that in mind. Again, some interviewers are nervous, some of them haven't. This could be their first interview. So again, just being aware of that. They may well be as nervous as you are. And I suppose kind of finally, you're interviewing them too. You want the best job you can get. You want, to love what you're doing, so ask them questions, make sure that you're finding out, are their values aligned to what yours are and what you want to achieve. And really, to me, and the experience, what I say to hiring managers all the time is, sell yourself. The candidate is interviewing you, sell yourself to that person. So again, just ask those questions of them, and do try to get to the bottom of, are they aligned to what it is you're looking for. And again, I suppose I know Rob had talked about, the confidence piece as well. Really do take this opportunity to sell yourself. It's your one opportunity. And I know a number of people have talked about the Irish personality, and for those who maybe aren't Irish on the call but have been in Ireland for a long time, maybe you've absorbed some of those characteristics, but this is your one opportunity to get those points across, and do take that opportunity to sell yourself. Nobody's going to mind. That's all for me, and I think we're going to open up the Q&A, but I'll hand over to our moderators now. Thank you very much, everyone.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Roseanne. And again, a very good presentation. Again, everyone can see the overlap between even as young engineers going down towards people with 20+ experience in certain areas. So on behalf of myself, Melissa, Greg, and the Young Engineers Ireland and the Engineers Ireland, I just want to kind of just say thanks very much to the four of you to kind of jumping on, and even I'm going to take something from them interviews as a student as well. So the plan kind of is now is there's a couple of questions in the Q&A box, but we're kind of going to do more of an open panel. So, some of the questions aren't directed at some of the speakers, so we'll just answer them as we go. We'll all do an open panel discussion. We'll bounce a few ideas off each other, because the seven of us here would all have our own opinions. So if seven of us kind of give our own opinions, it shouldn't take too long. It's a couple of questions, and people can kind of take, since seven of us are across different industries, some people can take what they kind of like from it. So the first question we have is from Amy Horn. Answers is, how do you respond if you're asked in an interview what kind of salary you're looking for? So since Rob kind of kicked off the evening, I can direct this one at you for now, Rob, and then if anyone has any input, we could kind of jump on. So
yeah, it's kind of a weird one. If you're probably asked what kind of salary you're looking for, I think I was asked this in an interview before. You can, I don't know, there's probably two ways about it. You can probably be cheeky and name your figure and see where it goes. Or I suppose there's another way around it, that you're looking for a competitive salary in the area. You're applying for the jobs, and you're kind of, maybe not phrase as playing the field, but you're looking for the best options, looking for the best career path for you. I suppose you don't have to give an exact figure, Roseanne. You might be able to give a better answer than I can on this, or might have more experiences on things like this. But I suppose from my own experience, make sure you're saying it's a competitive rate, and that you're, I'm sure, as other people have mentioned, you're applying for a number of roles, and they'll be aware of that as well. So they'll definitely take that into account.
Yeah, and I don't think, no matter how many times you get asked it and how many interviews you've done, I don't think the question actually, as a candidate, I don't think the question gets any easier. But I think, Rob, you've talked to it, try not to, at the outset, try not to focus on the number itself, talk about, competitiveness.
No, sorry, we just lost. Apologies, we lost you there, Roseanne, for a second.
Oh, apologies. Where was I? But I think, to Rob's point, maybe kind of start with other items, kind of less, don't go straight into what your number is, but maybe kind of start looking for a competitive salary, based on market norms, but that how other things are also important to you, that personal growth, personal development, an organization that's aligned to your values, having something that kind of, challenges you, and that will kind of facilitate all those other things that are important. But I know myself as an interviewer, and I would have a habit of probing more and saying, yes, but, at the same time, please. And again, I won't force it. If somebody really doesn't want to say, I'm not going to absolutely force it, but I will definitely probe into it, because I do think sometimes it is just around maybe making sure everybody's aligned in what the organization's prepared to pay, but what you are also prepared to accept. So but it doesn't get any easier. It's not an easy question.
To help with that, you can look at the Engineers Ireland survey guide, and Hayes have a survey guide as well. So you can do some research, and you can figure out a range of where you think you might fall, if that does help. and you can maybe speak to that range as opposed to your number that's in your head.
Yeah, very good, Gregory. Yeah, a lot of the recruitment agencies like Hayes, but a lot of the other ones, they'll always do an annual salary guide. So yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So then I think we can move on to the next question unless anyone has any other input. But hopefully that kind of, sorry there.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut across you. One thing I would say that, like, if you do know someone in the field, like if you're going for a job, you've probably graduated with someone that's also in that field. Don't be afraid to ask around. You'll have a figure. They'll ask around what they're making, like on the QT, roughly what are you making? I don't want an exact number, but going into your interview, if it's not advertised how much you're getting paid, like here, this is what these companies are paying. It should be in the same ballpark.
Perfect. Thanks very much for that, lads. Next question. Apologies on my pronunciation. It's coming from Mehmet Khmer. I'm applying to planner, but I need a job visa, so no company give me a chance. Any advice? Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the kind of that whole job visa process coming from outside either the EU or any kind of organization. So I think, like, just judging from the question, I'd say if the possibility of getting a job visa is a possibility, obviously go for that. But again, it's kind of out of my area of expertise. So I'm not familiar with the whole process.
My advice would be to be honest with the company you're interviewing from the start. So if, you know, when you're applying, say, I do need a visa to work here, is this something you'd be able to help me with? I know a lot of companies in the Thomond region do help with the visas. I have a lot of friends that came from outside of Europe, and their visas have been supported by their companies. So I would just be honest and say it up front when you're applying, and ask for help.
And I suppose the only other thing to mention, and I think it is, again, I'm no visa expert, but again, it's something I've come across. I think if you do a master's, then you'll get you can get the stamp 1G, which can allow you to work for 2 years afterwards. So again, that like, I'm not saying you want to do a master's or have the expense of that, but again, that's another option, because that does the stamp 1G does come after a master's qualification from an Irish university.
Perfect. All good. Perfect. Hopefully that answers your question now. Hopefully we kind of tried our best. Next question is coming from Paul. Paul has 2 questions there, so we'll kind of get them 2 done at the same time. What questions should I ask the people interviewing me to make a good impression? I think personally,
you can take that one, Paul.
Yeah, perfect. We kind of touched that in the interview.
Yeah, I think you should be asking about chartership early on in your career. You should be showing your aspiration to progress yourself. It should be your aspiration anyways. You shouldn't just be saying this to make a good impression, but that should be your goal. That'd be my advice. And you should be asking the company how they will support you in that goal or towards that route. If anyone else wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I'd say, like, if you have any genuine questions, genuine interest about the job, about the role, about the company, this is the time to bring them up rather than sign your life away, I suppose, on a contract. So no matter how big or small your questions are, definitely bring them up and definitely get them clarified before you do sign your name on the dotted line, as they say.
Perfect. We'll take Paul's second question just as we're on the topic of that situation. Paul said, how important are grades on a CV? Do I need 5 or 6 semesters worth of grades with my leaving cert results, or will my 4th semester grade do? People could have different opinions on this, but my own personal opinion, absolutely not. Nowadays, there's literally one grade, like half a percentage is the difference between a 1-1 graduate and a 2-1 graduate. If you got an A2 in report and you got an A1 and something else and you lost out by the A1 from 0.5%, that is the difference between you graduating with a 1-1 and a 2-1, even a 2-2. Putting all your grades on, I'm more so putting the modules you've done other than your grades, because just because you got a D3 in a particular module doesn't mean you're not good at the module. It just means you don't have I'm not going to say you don't have the ability to remember and put it on paper, but you have that skill, you have that basic knowledge in your head. So when you do go to an interview, you'd be surprised that things actually do come back quite quick. And just because you got a D3 on that module, there's people out there that haven't done that module, so you're automatically putting your pen to paper. So you're sitting on that kind of that knowledge, your basic what you're bringing through. My own personal opinion, my own personal life, grades don't matter. And my friends will tell you, first year I struggled past first year, made it through second year, and I graduated with 1-1. And like again, there's no difference between a 1-1 and 2-1 graduate, or 2-2. It's your personality, it's your person. Like people don't want to hire someone that's the smartest person in the room. They want to hire someone that they can sit down and work in a team together. And I don't know if you want to agree with or not agree with that. I think a lot of companies want people that they can sit down and talk to for 8 hours a day. Like generally the people like be getting 4.0s and stuff is either can't talk to anybody or you can talk to loads of people that kind of way. That's again just my personal opinion in terms of grades. If you want to add any points to that.
Yeah, just to follow on from that, I failed second year. So like to me, I don't think grades are important. I don't have any of my grades on my CV anymore, definitely not my Leaving Cert grades. I didn't have them on my graduate CV either. Like maybe if you're going into a business role, you might say, oh, I did business in Leaving Cert. I don't know, but for what I was doing, none of my Leaving Cert results were relevant. Like my B2 in Spanish wasn't going to help me in automation engineering. So yeah, like Paul said, the names of the modules are more important. And if you can talk about what you did in that module and relate it to something in the job description, I think that's definitely more important than what grade you got in it.
Yeah, I agree as well. We actually had a really good discussion this time last year in the CV clinic by Thomond. Yes, it's on YouTube if you want to refer to that. But again, it depends what stage you're at. If you're in first or second year looking for a summer role, it might be good to maybe show that you studied physics or technical drawing in Leaving Cert, but you don't need to be given grades. And again, it's good to flag subjects you have studied, but you don't need to be given all your grades. Maybe your end of term QCA or your when it comes to applying for a graduate role, your aspiration maybe you might be getting a 2-1 or 2-2, just so they know that you're kind of in that ballpark, that you've put effort into education. But in terms of saying that you did you got a B2 in one module in college or an A1 or whatever, it's not the end of the world.
And I would say the same, you know, that I think it depends as you progress through your career, certain things become less important and you try to condense them because you want to use it for the more important aspects. So again, as you're kind of getting to, I suppose, kind of, you know, your final year in college, your Leaving Cert might become more irrelevant. But, you know, having said that, it's your CV, you know, it's about what you want to sell, what you want to portray as part of yourself as well. So kind of using those aspects, you know, and drawing out those pieces. You know, if you did get a 1-1, you might want to sell that and put that in lights, absolutely. But it's not necessary. If you've got the degree, you've got the degree. I think to Paul's point, you know, it's kind of by the by as to I'm sure somebody who got a 1-1 would maybe disagree with me, but whether it's a 1-1 or a 2-1, it's if you've got the degree, you've got the qualification.
Absolutely. Does anyone else have any points to add there, or we continue on with questions? Oh, good. Now, so question from Ellen. If you're applying / interviewing for a few jobs at the same time, should you tell the interviewers? I think I'll kick this off. I don't think it's important. I think what relevant is the conversation you're having with that company. Again, personal kind of thing. Like they shouldn't need to know that you're applying for companies. Again, never put all your eggs in one basket, because the unlikely event something might happen or might go your way. It's always good to have second options there ready to go. But at the end of the day, if you do at the end of the day, if a company wants you, they're going to try and get you. And that's where if you do have other offers is where you kind of can tailor like which one you want to go for the most. But no, companies know you're not going to I think companies know you're not just applying to them. You obviously have your preferences of what companies you want to work for. And I kind of point what Kira said, apply for everything, because you don't realize the opportunities. Like you could get an interviewer that like just likes you like as a person really much, and like that whole connection straight away is going to get you an opportunity. So apply for everything, and like don't tell like that it's not kind of, I don't want to say in a blunt way, but it's kind of none of their business that you're applying for the jobs. Like you want what's best for you. And the more jobs you apply for is more chance you actually succeeded. So I'll leave it up for discussion there. Let's.
The only thing I would say is that it is occasionally a question I ask at the end of an interview, just so I know, I suppose, how far along they are in a process, how fast we might need to move through our own process, that type of thing. So obviously I would divulge at that point, you know, if you are interviewing with others, and they may go so far as to ask things like, you know, I suppose, how does this rate in comparison to another role as well? Like, would you accept an offer from us instead of that position, type of thing? But no, and you don't necessarily need to give details as to the organization. I probably would withhold that. I certainly wouldn't challenge somebody to say who you were specifically interviewing with, but just to kind of give them an idea as to the role itself, and as I say, more to the stage. But I wouldn't, to your point, Paul, I wouldn't offer it up if they don't ask. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, perfect. Rob, Ciara, Dara, anyone add to that, or we go on to kind of the last? That's not really a question. John Coleman has a couple of points mentioned. Okay, move on to that. We'll move on. All good. So John kind of just said it's not a question, kind of just posted in a couple of points what he said. So I'll just read out what he said. Because however you feel for as someone who used to interview people, including graduate engineers, all the points made by the people presented are valid. So your dress, your timekeeping, etc. Kind of points that he kind of they'll definitely worth considering. So number one, Ciara is correct. It's not about experience at this stage. It's about it is about you're able to learn, and more importantly, you as a team player, and this will fit with your existing team. This carries more weight this carries more weight than many appreciate. Anything that supports teamwork is worth selling. So that's kind of the point I kind of mentioned. Again, it's not about your grades and stuff. It's about your ability to work in a team, because at the end of the day, you're spending 40 hours a week with your particular team. And if you don't like it or not, you're going to become friends with this person. And it's just nothing worse if you don't get on, because it's not going to be ideal. Point two, he kind of said, is be polite. Be surprised at the number of people who are not polite. So again, you should always be polite. You don't know who you're seeing, where you are, where you work, especially in interviews. It's always try and be polite, especially what you're doing. Like for my own personal example, I work in a restaurant here in Limerick, and I've made, through my LinkedIn, I've made many connections with company directors, high up in engineers and companies around Limerick, and that was just my whole interaction as a waiter speaking to them. So it's always good to be polite in them kind of, especially in interviews. Look at the person asking the questions. There will be usually more than one interviewing. It's just literally, if someone's asking you questions, they're back at them. It's kind of quite more difficult when you're online, but definitely in person. Eye contact is incredibly important. Point four, all skills you have as a graduate are transferable. So as Ciara said, apply anyway. Don't worry about too much about a perfect fit for the job description. Let the interview decide if you're not suitable yourself. So like, again, let the kind of interview decide whether you're going to be able for the job. I think someone mentioned a point where they can like put you onto another role instead of the particular role you apply for. Because again, I think like kind of jobs I've applied for in recent times, when you apply for one, you're actually applying for a few. It's just you just apply for that particular one. If they find you're going to be better suited for a different role, they have no hesitation. They'll make the next person's interviewer process easier by like offering up a candidate. 5, don't fidget with anything. Several due to nervousness, especially rings or bracelets. So again, like everyone gets nervous. It's a natural human thing to do. But like everyone has their ways of coping. But I'm fidgeting here, like I'm not nervous, but I'm just kind of like that kind of way. Especially when you're interviewing, you'll be prone to doing it. And again, a good idea. 6, a good idea to leave. I don't. Oh, 1 sec.
I think that message got cut off. It was too long.
Perfect. So that kind of that was really questions for John. Does anyone have points for that?
Yeah, in terms of good advice, what I always say to people is, we're engineers. When we discuss ideas, we tend to draw and use pictures. So why is it when we go into interviews, we try to use words to describe things instead of flipping over a piece of paper and drawing what you're describing? That's something I've done in a lot of interviews, to try and explain to them the words, and it's not coming out properly. And
yeah, I've been asked to draw as well in interviews, just to draw knot gates and stuff, like, you know, mock up circuits. So don't bring a pen, like, bring paper.
real basic stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be pretty, but just get your point across.
No, I'm not an artist for sure. So
You're going to be doing that in the real world anyway. If you're sitting down at a design meeting or something and your engineers are not going to use your words, you're going to take out a pen and paper or a whiteboard. So why don't you do it in the interview?
Yeah, I think it's something people forget. Would that be fair, Roseanne? Is that something you probably haven't seen in a long time, maybe? Or
No, I think, look, I think it would certainly be memorable, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. So, you know, if you've kind of gone through 20 interviews, I think, you know, if that's the way that works for you, absolutely, you know. Look, what's the worst thing that can happen, you know, is what I suppose my response to that would be. If it doesn't sit with those interviewers that you're meeting on that particular day, do you know what? Maybe it's not for you anyway. You know, so I suppose that's kind of what what I would say. You know, absolutely. If you think that's a better way of getting something across, to your point, you know, it's your background. So
Perfect. Excellent, guys. So there's one last question here, and there's a couple of points mentioned for like not necessarily questions from. We have Ella here asked, how do you recommend towing the line of selling yourself as much as possible without starting to lie? Again, I don't think lying in an interview is a good thing. Definitely, if you don't have nothing to back it up, because you will get caught out in terms of, like, if you said something, you did something in a company, and then they phone your references, and they're like, oh no, that's not going to help your situation in any circumstance. But I think, like, you all know your own ability, and regardless, everyone's like, when you say you're not good at something or you're good at something, in your head you always know that you're a lot better than you're letting yourself to be. And that'd be with kind of having conversation with friends, chatting about your work, going about your daily life. But when you're in that interview, you're just meeting that person for the first time, and you want to tell them as much as you can how good you actually are as a person and a slash engineer. So again, just like, you know, what you're good at, as I said, just like bombard them in examples where you've used like what you're good at, and just avoid kind of lying as much as you can. Because, like, if you do lie in something, you say you're good at something, and you go into the job, then no, you're not, then it's just going to reflect, and the possibility you join that company in the future has gone down to zero. So any other points on that?
I think the only other item I'd mention on that, Paul, is, again, absolutely key. Don't veer into the line of lying. And that's a repetition of what you've said already. And you know, but you will be surprised, you know, if you think about, I know I had kind of touched on it in the couple of slides I did, preparation. Think about the competencies, the skills, the experiences that they're looking for. If you think about that in advance, you will be surprised where those examples will come from, somewhere in the back of your mind. And that's why I always encourage people, when they're preparing for interviews, as you're starting to make those applications, start thinking about those things that are kind of coming out time and time again on those various job descriptions. You will be surprised where you can think of something. And again, you know, like, what I will say to people is that if you sit at a desk and think, you know, with a blank sheet of paper, oh, how can I demonstrate excellent conflict management or teamwork, or, you know, maybe something more kind of functional, professionally based, try not to do it like that. Think about it when you're going for a walk. Think about it when you're driving. You know, think about it in different scenarios, and think through those examples, and then come home and just kind of jot those down so you can recall them as and when you need them.
I just have a point to add as well, is that, as Paul said, your references, it's a small world. Like, if you lie about something, that I did this for this company, you don't know that the person interviewing you doesn't know the person, like a few of the people in the company you're talking about, and they can just pick up the phone like, oh, hey, and they'll have it sorted straight away. So don't blatantly lie about something like that.
All good. So this is kind of, I'm going to run through the other ones quick because I don't want to be holding people down for too long because we're all quite busy. Jared Flaherty mentioned kind of 2 points. When you're submitting your CV or cover letter, check your spelling carefully. If you don't, it's a reflection on you. And that's across all your work. Obviously, spell check everything. And again, there's nothing worse when you send off a letter and just kind of spelling error, because if it's obvious, like it might be an off chance where they might miss it, but if they do, it's kind of just in the back of the head that they're going to be, okay, this obviously doesn't reread their work or whatever. It could be a copy and paste job, and just kind of send it off all in once, and then keep your CV to max 2 pages.
Can I just say on the spell check one, I'm an engineer and my sister's a primary school teacher, so I always get her to check my stuff because she's not interested in the content. She doesn't care about engineering, but she'll check it like she's marking second class homework. So she'll get somebody outside of your field to check it, would be my advice. And then you can do it back for them, because you know I don't really care about lesson plans, but I'll check the content of them for her. So
absolutely. Like, and again, like all engineers kind of think differently. Most things, like I do all my assignments and I run everything through Grammarly, and then I get my friends and family going through my reports, because like even like my English is just terrible in terms of writing. So look, it's again, it's something to just be careful of. And again, if it's a good cover letter with no spellings, like it's going to be read and stuff. So obviously be careful. And again, there's a point on the CV, max 2 pages. What I done for my CV, I put my LinkedIn link on the top of my CV, and I use that as more of an extension of my CV. So I kind of have my main points on my CV that I kind of hit the max 2 pages, and then my LinkedIn has like all my irrelevant experience of like working outside the engineering world, so they kind of get a more of a flavor of what kind of background I was in. And that's something like I
was just going to edit something after you go on to finish your point. Sorry.
But that's something like I'll definitely kind of pass on. Like if no one has LinkedIn, I recommend getting on it personally. Like it might be important in the eyes of a hirer, but like it's definitely something that's been benefiting me as a student and as a researcher, because you can get your work across, you can get your work known to people, and if you're into an interview process, it could be an off chance where that interview could have actually seen your work through like a grad engineer liking your post, and then the grad engineer could follow that person could see your work. So it's a good opportunity to expand your network. And again, I think Dara mentioned the point of like the UL alumni and stuff. Like the more connections you have in the engineering world, the better chance you've succeeding per se. If anyone has any points to that, sorry, Robert.
No, you're right. I suppose the only thing I was going to add there, just bringing up CVs, it was a weird one that kind of was brought to my attention on a job that I got recently. That having your picture in your CV is something that really makes you stand out. It's something I had kind of just thrown in because I got a template off the internet to fill in my stuff and make it look a bit nicer. But it's probably an extra point, I suppose, to give as a tip. Throwing a picture, it can make you stand out a small bit rather than just being text on a paper with your name, your date of birth, and all this kind of stuff. It'll give a bit more personal touch to your CV and might make it stand out that small bit more. Especially when they're probably sifting through a whole host in an interview process, that it'll give it a bit more of a personal touch and make you stand out, make it a bit more memorable, I suppose.
Use a professional picture though, don't crop a picture from a night out. Like I see since we started using Teams, a lot of people are just cropping a nice photo they have, but you can see people's arms around shoulders and everything. So use a good headshot.
We're engineers, we don't have a social life. And it's like, guys, sorry to keep everyone so long. There's kind of one last point from Suzanne. A quick note: HR professionals should be confident in interviewing candidates who are neurodiverse. In this case, if this is the case for you, let them know that any difficulty without making eye contact will be supported. So, like again, like going into interviews and stuff, like let them know if certain things you're not uncomfortable with, like that they're not known prior. Don't be afraid to let them know, because at the end of the day, we're all human. And, like they're not going to look at you any different because a certain situation mightn't be helpful or whatever. But again, like if you don't ask, you won't get, that kind of way. I think Roseanne, you'd be more kind of suited for that question more.
Yeah, like I suppose with any of those types of things, like if people have something that they want to raise with an employer, they like if somebody might be in a wheelchair, and it might be worth kind of just mentioning that prior to attending the building that the interview is in, because obviously just making sure that the interview room is on the ground floor and all of that. And there are obligations there where employers do need to make certain accommodations for those types of things. So absolutely, if a candidate ever felt that there was something that they needed to raise in along those lines, then absolutely they should do so.
You're muted there, Paul.
Perfect. Sorry about that, guys. So I think that's all the kind of Q&A that's in the box. So again, on behalf of myself, Chris, Greg, and the Young Engineers Society, thanks to all our attendees that showed up. Obviously, with college and stuff, everyone's going into the young graduate, and even lads that are graduated. Again, it's a Wednesday evening, taking time. Champions League football is on, so I got a lot of people who will be quite busy for the evening. But and to all our speakers, look, guys, even as myself, I'm definitely going to be looking back on these interviews, using these points. I'm definitely going to benefit me, and like I think you'd be kind of silly not to, because again, these have gone through the process, they've done it all. So like what they're saying is the gospel. So again, I'll hand you over to Greg to finish off the evening.
Yeah, brilliant, guys. Thanks, Paul. Thanks to all the speakers again. Well done to Dara, Kira, Razan, and Robert. It was great listening to you. Loads of great points. And thanks again, Carissa and Paul, for organising everything behind the scenes. And Maureen, who's hiding there. Thanks for setting up the event for tonight. And thanks to all the participants. And we've loads of great questions. It's great to get some interaction, especially at 8:10 in the evening. So thank you all very much.